Welcome to Not How Life Works, a channel that offers narratives appropriate for people across all age groups. Today, we go on a mysterious episodic voyage, following Commander Aya and her crew on board the Carousel on a mission to investigate a strange target that has emerged in the depths of space. We hope you enjoy this original work. Chapter 1. The Signal. A sudden clack reverberated through the eerie atmosphere of the flight deck, causing her to abruptly rotate in her seat. Her bright green eyes darted around the room before focusing on what appeared to be an alert, a blinking light on her console. The spacecraft emitted a gentle hum above her head, serving as a constant companion in the immense void of space. Quietness weighed down the walls, which were adorned with slick interfaces and glowing buttons. As her gaze swept across this center of advanced technology and isolation, she noticed the name Carousel subtly engraved on a nearby screen, the ship's vessel's moniker in white against a sleek aluminum exterior. She considered the duality of her life, the recurrent nature of her feelings and the path she took. It seemed as if her life, like the amusement ride, looped indefinitely, with moments of delight and sorrow blending into an ever-present swirl of rumination. It's common to picture unfettered delight when you see a carousel with all the bright lights and infectious earworms. But it also reflected her own emotions, which were in a perpetual state of flux due to her own deeds, the unresolved remnants from her past that remained unchanged throughout the years, returning again and again to the same highs and lows. The main display once again met her eyes, which betrayed a combination of resolve and underlying sadness that the tiny camera lens in front of her had probably already captured. As she delicately pressed the touch screen, she commenced the intimate yet mundane routine. Captain's log, 14001. Just 38 hours left. Crew morale is wavering. What do you want me to say? She infused it with just enough snark to piss off the army of psychiatrists and psychologists that were waiting on the other side to diagnose her. She had to always be acutely aware of them passing her logs, fervently pursuing any chink in her ship, any indication of stress or strain that could deem her unfit. She contemplated the extent to which they would relish seeing her downfall, which made her question why she even took the job in the first place. To them, she was a subject, a specimen to be dissected and understood, her mental fortitude a puzzle to be solved and then undone. The irony wasn't lost on her, the captain of the first vessel of its kind steering humanity's aspirations among the stars, yet tethered to the whims of those who saw her as nothing more than an experiment. It's been 1,400 days since I've been away from you. The mention of you carried the same weight as it always did. She choked, unable to continue, rapidly recalling that she had entered an excessive number of accounts related to him. Untethered from the present, she drifted to that balcony overlooking the city of contrasts, where beauty and devastation had coexisted since the day she was born. The bones of buildings that were once bustling with vitality now lay still, their accounts struck short by a force so foul that it torments her mind every time she's in suspended stasis. The city's heart had been ripped open, its pulse stilled, leaving behind a scarred landscape that mourned in silence. Instantaneously, the image of him flooded her mind. His ponderous silence conveyed more than that of any individual she had ever been involved with. She considered telling him to look at her, but decided it would be more advantageous for the both of them to stare at the ruins instead. In her anguish, she had yearned for words, any words, to bridge the chasm that his decisions had wrought. With an air of desperate impatience, she pleaded, "Do you want to say anything?" As the prolonged stillness began to wear her down, she shifted her strategy. "I never meant to put you in this situation, but this gray zone, it's untenable. I need to know where we stand." She perceived his stillness to be an impenetrable fortress. He was a figure bearing the same scars as the cityscape, and his eyes, brimming with unshed tears, provided no guidance or map for navigating the terrain of his emotions. "Aya," he finally spoke with an emotion that just barely trembled on the edge of vulnerability. "This is who I am. This is what I want from us." It was a moment of raw truth, an offering of his essence and desires laid bare before her. Absorbing the weight of his words, she felt a seismic shift in their dynamic. Was waiting an option she should have considered? The question lingered, unanswered, as it had through countless stars and over countless miles. Would she have just delayed the inevitable drift? She felt a constant ache from the temporal gap between her life in space and her earthly existence. Back home, years had unfolded, 1,400 days to be exact, even though she had aged just months on her relativistic sacrifice. She adhered to a strict regimen of recordings, aligning them with the chronological progression of Earth's days as a ceremonial practice to establish a connection with the world she had departed from. Aya initiated a diagnostic on the Carousel's enormous rotating drum. This colossal structure, a linchpin in their Odyssey, had taken years to position in orbit, but it could have been done in half that time had the final nations worked together. The undertaking was riddled with rivalries and isolation, reflecting the greater human preference for competition over cooperation. The loss of contact with 2 ships a week earlier had placed a pall over the expedition. What started as a collective leap towards the unknown had devolved into a desperate scramble, a gold rush tainted by territorial claims and fading camaraderie, as the 6 vessels had been reduced to 3. "Diagnostics on the rotating drum are underway," she noted, her voice providing a sense of peacefulness. Even though she had already violated this procedure numerous times before, it was always going to be inconsequential. By the time anybody saw them, the mission would be over, and any of her decisions right now will be seen as either a magnificent display of rationality and calculation or a foolish blunder by an inept commander, contingent upon whether it succeeded or failed. It was imperative for her to keep on speaking lest something appear amiss, for silence was her adversary. "I know you will hate this, but Zoe requested it, and I want to keep this team happy. Since the Nán Mén Èr, I would rather watch them sleep than be at each other's throats. Besides, it really is a one-person job. I suppose you should include this in the next simulation, Hakim. The new recruits can handle it, right? Run it for Samir as well. Yeah, I'm talking about the botanist." The Nán Mén Èr, a massive space vessel, made the Carousel seem humble in comparison, despite the fact that her ship was not precisely small. This behemoth was the result of an unprecedented collaboration between 2 of the world's foremost powers, erstwhile adversaries who had set aside their differences to forge something magnificent in the vacuum of space, showcasing the power of unity and the wonders that can be accomplished in a third of the time it took to build the Carousel. Aya had been in sporadic contact with the captain of the Nán Mén Èr. Their exchanges, most of the time brief and professional, were the only form of communication amidst the unfathomable distances and relativistic velocities. Though the Carousel boasted a slightly faster speed, the Nán Mén Èr had left months earlier and was scheduled to reach their mysterious target 2 weeks ahead of them, a fact that injected a subtle urgency into the Carousel's mission. Their conversations grew unexpectedly candid as the Nán Mén Èr got closer to their mysterious object. The captain's admissions to the growing disagreement within his crew, mutiny rumors and detentions, painted a clear picture of a mission that was beginning to unravel. Aya found it increasingly disconcerting, as these admissions coincided with the loss of signal. The timing was ominous. As they edged closer to the target, the fabric of their expedition seemed to be undone. The captain's uncertainty about continuing the mission, a sentiment so raw and unguarded, echoed in Aya's mind, a stark contrast to the stoic resolve commanders were expected to exhibit. The choice to keep her crew in stasis, to preserve their cohesion by forestalling the very human fears and prejudices that seemed to plague the Nán Mén Èr, now felt more justified than ever. Yet it was a decision laden with its own set of risks and moral quandaries, even incarceration upon return. "There's a discrepancy in the data stream," she said, her pupils constricting as she made sense of the digital mayhem. A file, corrupted and flickering in and out of coherence on the screen, evoked more memories long dormant. "Computer viruses," she said, the word seeming antiquated as it slipped her lips, a remnant from an era when such dangers were ubiquitous. A wry smile decorated her lips. He had been adept at crafting such digital dilemmas, a skill that once fascinated her. She remained unfazed by the irony. A digital abnormality appeared in her spacecraft's nerve center at the same time as his image had risen in her recollections. She thought about how often he was on her mind and admitted to herself that the link between the two was less ironic and more of an unavoidable confluence. The alarm's initial subtlety gradually gave way to a more urgent and persistent tone, leaving no doubt that the situation was worsening. Screen by screen, her visual connection to the Carousel's systems blinked out, replaced by a pervasive blackness that seemed to engulf the whole space. "System screens are going offline," she declared, uncertain if the recording process had been compromised as well. Throughout this unexpected blackout, Aya's thoughts raced with potential solutions and scenarios, pondering the number of seconds needed to reach the pods and whether or not they were still functional. What if she were to be stranded here? Not solely her own, but the Carousel's crew also experienced these apprehensions, magnified now as they ventured closer to their target than any had before. The spectre of the Nán Mén Èr loomed large in her mind. Had they experienced this same suffocating darkness, this abrupt severance from control? Was this blackout a precursor to their silence, a harbinger of the same fate awaiting the Carousel? Then, as suddenly as it had left, power returned to the displays. They flickered to life, not with the familiar readouts and data, but with an unsettling static. Interestingly, the hum of the air vents remained constant throughout the entire process, giving her some assurance that the pods were also all right. The static on them started to consolidate, similar to the gradual materialization of a generated image, with pixels aligning and colors blending to create a cohesive whole. Aya stared, her scientific mind wrestling with the absurdity of the occasion as a face formed from the chaos, unmistakably his. James, a man who had no place among the stars and was never meant to don a spacesuit. His disheveled appearance stood in striking contrast to her recollections of him. A drizzle of blood from a laceration above his hazel eyes soiled his look, and sweat dampened his forehead beneath the helmet. The terror in his eyes imbued the inconceivable situation developing before her with a sickening sense of impossibility and dread. His words pierced the static with chilling clarity. "We should never have come here," he said, his voice straining. "I understand this is difficult, but you have to trust me. I've altered the ship's course. You're now drifting away from me. I blew out the fuses in the pods, so you best hurry." Aya's mind raced with calculations. Replacing a fuse took about 15 minutes per pod, with 25 pods in total. 360 minutes to save everyone, but with only a 120-minute window of life support in the deactivated pods, not everyone could be saved. She frantically tried to answer, breaking through the one-way connection. "James, wait! This must be a joke, right?" But his somber certainty dashed any hopes for levity. "This is not a joke. You need to start right now. Save as many as you can. And Aya, please forgive me." His face diffused back into the static while the predicament engulfed her with the gravitational force of celestial bodies. Attempt to reverse course, allocating valuable time that might perhaps result in the condemnation of most of her crew, or prioritize the pods, therefore optimizing their survival at the expense of their mission's trajectory, potentially leading to a permanent stranding in outer space. As she contemplated this dreadful decision, a facet of hers resisted acknowledging the reality of James's existence. There was no way it was real. It must have been some kind of elaborate manipulation. Regardless of its veracity, the threat was evident, and her subsequent actions would decide the destiny of her crew. Whether real or imagined, her unsettling meeting with James had hurled her into a terrifying race against time. She decided to go for the crew. As we take a break from Aya's expedition, we invite you, our listeners, to join us by expressing your thoughts, subscribing to our channel, and spreading the word about this adventure, for our next chapter will hopefully be added in the following weeks. Aya's profound encounter comes to a temporary close and serves as a reminder that trying to erase the past is not how life works.